Welcome to Oh Hell No with Nicole.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Oh Hell No podcast. Today I have Kerry-Ann Reid Brown. She is the host of the Kerry-Ann Friends podcast, and we're going to find out what else she does. Welcome, Kerry.
Thank you for having me, Nicole.
No problem. I'm excited to talk to you.
I'm excited to be here.
So first of all, I love your podcast. It is amazing. I love listening to, all the guests that you have come on, and the conversation is just right up my alley.
Oh, I'm so happy that you're enjoying the show. It's like one of those things that if you just reach one, it's good. Like really, there's a whole new meaning behind like when someone connects, and I enjoy that. So I appreciate it.
Cool. So you came to America 25 years ago.
Yes.
Right? Coming from Jamaica, island that I love. That's my heritage as well.
Oh, Jamaican walk on.
Yes, honey. So I just wanted to start off by talking to you about your transition when you came here. So what was the hardest transition for you when you moved to this country?
I grew up very close to my grandmother particularly. And I think Jamaica and a lot of the Caribbean and culturally, we grew up with extended families. So I know second cousin, third cousin, fourth, fifth, everybody just kind of grew up around each other. But the hardest transition were my grandparents. I was extremely close to them, and not having my grandmother around was different. It was different. And then I think the next hardest transition was definitely the weather. It was cold.
That's so funny. My husband is Jamaican as well, and he loves the weather. He hates summer here.
No, summer here is definitely bad. Yeah. I can see that. Because there's this humidity versus, and they're like, well, you're from the Caribbean. I said, well, breeze are blue, like there are trees, it is hot versus there's a humidity here particularly in New York. So I can definitely see that. And because of how the buildings and houses are constructed, it is not set up for a good flow of fresh air.
Yeah.
So I can definitely see that.
Absolutely. So what did you dream of doing when you were growing up? As a child in Jamaica, you're running around, you're having a good time, enjoying your life. What did you dream about?
There were two things, honestly, and I'm going to tell a story and everybody go laugh at me. But one, I remember in high school, a classmate said, I'm going to be a lawyer. And I rejected it because back in Jamaica, they would tease you and say, you're a lawyer, you're going to be a liar. And I was like, I don't want to be a liar. So I didn't want to be a lawyer. But somebody did say that, and I felt like, years later, there were parallels to that.
Mm-hmm.
In high school, I did debate, and everybody said, my gosh, oh, you can't go to debate people. So it was like a de facto that I was going to be a lawyer. But then there was another side of me that I thought I was going to be a teacher. And because from a very young age, I was teaching. Like I taught Sunday school. My grandmother ran a daycare. So it was like a family effort. Everyone had to be part of this. When she had like a facility, she was running the community daycare. And then after Hurricane Gilbert, which was like 30 years ago, this September, the daycare moved to our house. And so I was part of that. And then, typical in a lot of Jamaican homes, there's flower pots all over the place, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the flower pots were my students, and I would beat the flower pots, because that's what teachers did. So I was just emulating what teachers did in school in Jamaica. So I was teaching the flower pot. So those are two things that I thought I was doing. And I feel like I am not doing those two things exactly, but in some way adjacent to those two things. So yeah, law and teaching.
Wow, interesting. We have a lot of things in common.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my mom always told me that I should be a lawyer because I love arguing. By the time I finish, presenting my case, the judge will say, look, just come out of my courtroom. Go on. Yes, you win.
Yeah, I kind of get that, like, or if someone says something to me and like somebody said to me a couple of years ago, like, if you don't want to respond to me, you don't have to, blah, blah, blah. So I didn't respond. And then they came back and said, you could respond. I said, you told me that I didn't have to respond. So why should I respond? They were like, boy, yeah, exactly. And I'm like, no, but that's what you said. And the loopholes are what you didn't say. And, I spent a lot of my high school doing moot court, mock trial. I went to the Supreme Court when I was younger as a trip in high school. I've worked in the legal industry for a number of years. So I didn't become a lawyer, and I didn't want to do law school because in my second year of college, I remember I took this constitutional law class and I loved the class, but that professor was teaching us, because he was a law school professor and he was teaching us in the Socratic method. And I was just like, this is just not for me. I don't. And when I became a paralegal, I realized even more that I didn't want to be a lawyer, because being a lawyer requires a lot of writing. And while I do enjoy writing, the amount of writing that they had to do, I wasn't in for it. And they worked a lot more hours. And the more hours they work, it was almost like they weren't really making that much, especially if you were a really fresh junior associate. So I was like, I'm good being a paralegal.
Right. And that's the same thing that I did. I became a paralegal and then, yes.
What kind of law was it? Because I was in litigation. So I used to work like 24 hours.
I worked for medical malpractice on the defense side, and it was amazing. I loved it.
Wow.
But I was like, I'm going to see how this goes, and then I'll see if I want to go to law school. Then I was like, I worked very closely with one of the partners, and he used to always be at work. Like, he's the first one in the office, the last one in the, like, I was like, that would be my life? Oh, hell no. I'm good. So it's funny that, you did that same path. And that was going to be my next question, is how did you get into the legal field? But clearly it was a passion for, law. So you went that way first and realized that, you would just be happy doing the paralegal work.
Yeah. And also, the legal industry speaks to my very pragmatic and practical side. It is just very, there's a structure to it. And it was just, I thrived in that. And there were areas where, in the legal industry, there's not much room for creativity, but I worked with legal technology. So all the e-discovery stuff. And that's kind of where I used, I could apply technical skills or tech skills. But I did enjoy it for a period of time where you're like going through documents, reading and, figuring out, piecing cases together. I think that was an exciting part of it. But then burnout really happens quickly because I worked in litigation, and a lot of times in litigation, it requires long hours. And after a while, that takes its toll. Like when you're young, I could work 18-hour days and some days, occasionally the 24-hour shifts, because you have to file a document in court the next day and the lawyers wait till 5 o'clock to start working on it. So, after a while, it just gets too much to do.
So do you still work in legal?
No, I got out.
Oh, wow.
I got out. I had to, because while legal spoke to my very logical and practical side, my creative side was just kind of dying to get out. And there's just not much room for creativity. I didn't feel like I could be creative in that space. And so I just got out, and I'm working at a management consulting company, and I really enjoy it because there are so many specialties. And I'm like, I remember the partner I worked with, he called me a sponge, because he was like, you just soak up everything and you know a little bit about everything. So I could put you in a conversation about almost anything and something, because he's just like, you just gather information, just random stuff. And then when it so happens, I could just have any conversation, because like, oh, I read something like that. And people are always surprised, like, how did you come across that? I was like, it's kind of a nature of being a paralegal. You start researching one thing and you kind of go down rabbit holes, but they're like very interesting rabbit holes. You're like, I never knew this. And so that allows me to kind of have different conversations, and I'm just open to being, in wonder about different things that I don't normally would have sought out. So yeah, I had to get out. And
Wow.
also from a strategic perspective, from a career perspective, the legal industry was kind of going, or where I had started to specialize, was consolidating, and the industry of the company, of the legal industry itself, was just kind of moving in a way that was more, it was just uncertain. And I just felt like it was time to get out.
Okay. So, management consulting company, what exactly is that? Like high level explanation.
So management consultants are basically people that companies, depending on their expertise, they bring in. So you can have management consultants for, the big buzzword is digital transformation, and digital transformation could be, anything from, okay, how do you get your systems more organized and structured so the systems can speak to each other? They could do a variety of things. So management consultants, they come in to tell a company, or not tell a company, work or partner with a company to make some change that the company needs to do internally. So whether it's moving to a new system and they need adoption to the system, and they need, or they're trying to, like, we work, one of our specialties is healthcare. And so some of the consultants at my company, they help healthcare providers refine their services and offerings for patients. So it really depends on the need of the companies. But yeah, they specialize in different things. They help with different things. It could be financial, it could be technical, healthcare, it could be media entertainment, it could be a variety of things. But typically they just have solutions that a company needs,
Hmm.
and that they don't have that particular skill in-house, and they need an expert to help them implement the changes that they're trying to accomplish
Okay.
from an
Awesome.
organizational standpoint.
So, let's talk about Carry On Friends. This is your podcast. What made you start this podcast?
So I started Carry On Friends, the blog, first. And I
Mm.
started it because I worked in legal. I was a manager, a paralegal manager. And from a career standpoint, I felt like, one, it wasn't that I wasn't growing, but I didn't feel like around that time, I really felt like mentorship or sponsorship was something that I needed. Like I needed guidance. Like, where can I take my career? Because I've been doing it for myself and for others for so long, but I tend to feel like maybe if I get someone outside me, I could, you know, get more options or get more insights. And I wanted it because at the time at this job, I was having some challenges with some attorneys who thought that they literally said that I was mean. And I've never been mean. When I have nothing to say, I just don't say anything. And I realized that the issue that I was having was very cultural. Because I remember having the conversation with my cousin Grace, and she used to be an HR executive at a large company. And she's like, "Cuz, I had the same problem. I just adopted. I just adjusted, and I did what they wanted." And I was just like, young and fool, as they would say. It was just like, no, I don't want to adapt to this. This is who I am. Why can't people accept me for who I am? And I was just really struggling because I felt very misunderstood. And because I was misunderstood, I was pushed out. What was happening, there were games being, not, I don't want to say games, but within a company, there are certain things going on behind the scenes, relationships being formed, and you are kind of navigating in a strategic way. And Caribbean people is like, no, I'm gonna go work for work. I'm gonna come here for play games. And literally, you go and you work and your head's down. And while my head was down, there was a whole bunch of other stuff happening around me. I saw it, but I thought that my work would speak for itself, because up until that point, my work spoke for itself. I worked for partners who were just like, okay, she does the work. I don't care. She doesn't get involved in office gossip, and she gets it done. And that's what they like. She was like, Kerry-Ann is not going to be that person. They're going to go. I don't want to hear anything else. But at this firm, office gossip and politics was kind of priority over work.
Mm.
And it was hard to kind of thrive or succeed in a situation like that. And I was just looking for advice, because everyone who was giving me advice never considered culturally that it's not easy to tell someone who spent most of their lives hearing these things repeated: go to work, don't get no trouble, stay out of people business. Typical things that Caribbean people tell their kids. And to now hear that, no, you should go to work, laugh it up with your friends, get in everybody's business, find out what everybody's doing on the weekend. And it was just counter to how I was raised. And I felt offended that there was no consideration for who I was as a person and accommodation for how I communicate. And that was the reason why I started it. I felt like there was nowhere on the internet that I could find people to kind of identify, or people who had the same struggles as I was having as a professional Caribbean woman. So that's why I first started. So I started talking about parenting, work life stuff, just a variety of things. And then I really wanted to start the podcast, but I was too scared. And in the legal industry, it was kind of weird because I didn't want my firm to know that I had a blog. This was years ago when people were hiding behind their blogs. And so after I left that company, I started the podcast because I liked talking more versus writing remember, I didn't go to law school because I didn't want to write. And part of having a blog is writing. So while I do write fairly decently, I didn't want to do too much writing. So I wanted to talk instead. So that's how it came about. I really wanted a place where I could talk about the Caribbean American experience professionally, and just how it is, just trying to balance all the different roles that we have and how it's different from when our parents were coming up.
Yeah, I have to say, I have had those same experiences. And even though I'm born here, I'm raised by Caribbean parents. And that's the exact same thing my mom taught me. So I've always been, very direct, get my work done. I'm not too, jokey, like, and you do.
To come to work.
Right. It's not like, so then you do get this stigma around you like, oh, she's so serious, or she's so unapproachable, or,
Yes, I got those
kinds of things. But that's not really the case. It's just that I'm here to do my work, Yeah. So I can totally relate to that. I mean, I've softened up over the years.
I have too.
Yeah, just being, but I still watch myself because you don't want to get involved in no foolishness at work. Right? Because that's still at the front of your head, So the name Kerry-Ann Friends, where did the name come from?
So the name was more like, like Caribbean people said, boy, just carry on with your friend and talk or what. So I really want it to be about carrying on with your friends, whether it's carrying on about life, your career, your business, really just however you just go about our business. We're going to carry on about this movie. We're going to carry on about this, show. Just being in a state of with friends and just going about our way, going about our business, whether it is talking about our struggle, we're going to just carry on and go about with business, or carry on to get out through the struggle. It's just like a phrase that I was thinking about. And it just kind of stuck. I mean, I was like rattling my brain for a name. And I just said, what, just carry on with friends. Just carry on about whatever, no specific topic. It's a challenge. Like now I'm thinking about it. I'm kind of glad that it's kind of this ambiguous phrase. But from a marketing perspective, I definitely know like people are like, huh, what does this mean? But it was definitely just whatever it is, we're just like, go carry on, go about life, and just.
Yeah. I like it. I like it. And I think that once you can explain it and you know what it means, I think it's good. And I think it's also, something that will always bring up a conversation,
Yes, for sure it has.
So I like it. I think it's great.
Thank you.
So you have done a lot of podcasts about Caribbean culture and people who struggle with being born in another country and accepted by their country of heritage. Why does this resonate with you, considering you were born and lived in your country of heritage, if you will, for lack of a better phrase? But you are a, born 100% Jamaican woman. You come to this country, you're here, you get your citizenship and everything, but you can still, you're still claimed by your people. They will never say, no, you ain't no Jamaican, or, So
I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
yeah. So how comes this?
Why am I advocating for the people who are
Yes.
born here and saying they're of the culture? So
Right.
one of the beauty of moving to this country is also meeting cousins that you don't really know because they live in this other country. So my cousin Simone, who I met when I moved here 25 years ago, she was like my best friend for a long time. And to this day, when people will never believe that Simone is born here. I mean, she could switch between the accent and stuff, but Simone knew everything, almost everything about Jamaica. We knew all the new dances when it was coming out. We went to Jamaica. She was as much part of the culture because in the house, grandma, uncles, mommy, everybody, they were Jamaican.
Right.
Her parents spoke to her in Jamaican. She ate Jamaican food. She did all the things other than her being born in the US. There was nothing else that separated her from me being born in Jamaica and going to school in Jamaica. That was the only thing that separated us. And then by now, me living in this country more than I've lived in Jamaica, I mean, it's kind of, so it was. I would never tell Simone that she's not Jamaican. I mean, I think it would hurt her.
Absolutely.
Because it's just, I'm thinking about it and I'm just like, oh my God, I love my Simone. And I'm just like, she is every bit of Jamaican, and every bit of it is how she carries herself, how she shops, how she talks, how she dances to music, what music she listens to. Someone don't really know no hip hop. All she know is like Caribbean music.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't tell people they're not something, especially if their parents are from it and they grew up in it.
Right.
Right? Because the reverse is true of my cousin Travis. He was born here, but he was raised in Jamaica, but nobody wasn't telling him that he was this Yankee Pitney or American.
Right.
Because as far as they were concerned, he was living in Jamaica, even though he wasn't born there. So I just find it's like, that's not a conversation that we should have. The conversation should be more about how are we going to elevate our culture? How are we going to claim ownership to things that other people like? No disrespect to DJ Khaled, but this bless up thing, that's straight Jamaican.
Mm-hmm.
All these cultural things that people are owning, that's us. And it's like, we have bigger issues to deal with than whether my cousin born here is really Jamaican or really
Exactly.
That's a waste of time or time, practically.
Yes. And I love that you discuss that as a topic and you have different podcasts around the topic. I really love it and I appreciate it because I feel exactly how, your cousin would feel. Like my family, everybody in my family is Jamaican. My two sisters are even born in Jamaica. I happen to be born in the United States because my mom just was here, So it's just so crazy that people try to segregate your own people, unless you win an award for something.
Of course. The wagonist mentality. Oh, she's
Right.
one of us, or their parents are Jamaican, or their
Right.
parents are Caribbean. I mean, my son right now, I like my kids. I mean, they're very American, but when they're in the house and, like I was talking to my son and I'll never forget this conversation. He's only hearing my responses. So my uncle said, my niece, what go on? I'm saying, nothing in my day, And him say, yeah. So, oh yeah, and the kids, them, so boy, we there with us, I got you same way. Here, my 5-year-old son, mommy, it's not true, it's through. And first of all, get out of my conversation. Two, I was kind of proud that he understood the context,
Right.
just the word itself, right? And it goes to show that, and I think I said it on another podcast, for Latinos or the Hispanic community, language, food, and music, right? Those are things that you really can't take out of kids because you're cooking the food, you're either having a conversation in the language, and of course there's always music playing. Right. And so these are the things that kids pick up right away. So my son, I was going through something and he heard Ding Dong's voice and he was like, what's that? So my husband said, you know who it is. Go and pay attention to what he was doing. because he perked up because he loves the dancing. So I think that what people fail to understand, especially, and maybe because I've lived here long enough, I know that, when you're in the island, when you're on the island, it's very easy to say, okay, this is my culture. But there's this aspect of cultural longevity, right? So I remember coming here and going back to Jamaica one trip, and my cousins were like, boy, you thought worse than when you used to live out here. And I knew why they said it. Because when you move here, you kind of want to hold on to the parts of your culture. And you find yourself sometimes, sometimes they say Americans, Caribbeans in America speak worse than those back home because they just dig into the accent a little bit more.
Yeah.
Whereas, and back home, they know it's proper English in class. Whereas over here, nobody's telling us it's proper English or speak English. They know it's English. We're just going to talk the patois in class and no teacher is going to correct us. So I think the larger thing I think of is like, how do we maintain this culture and pass it to another generation of people to kind of to take that, to take it to the next level and keep running with that flag of pride. And the only way to do that is to kind of pass down some of the culture.
Right. And that segues into my next question, which was going to be, you're a mom and you have your children, you're a Jamaican woman living in America. How do you raise your children and what do you teach them about their heritage and who they are?
Boy. So I try to balance the old school with the new school, right? And sometimes, my sister-in-law and I, and even my husband, we kind of said, boy, them pitney they get there with murder, But we try to balance some of the old school and some of the things that we know didn't work. So we know that, like, growing up when it was easy for our parents to, to shut us down in terms of, to speak when you're spoken, to answer when you're told. So you were always this quiet, like a child must not be seen or heard, right? They just must be quiet.
Right.
And at the same time, if they're too quiet, they call you out and ask what you're doing. So it was always this contradiction. Should I or shouldn't I? Because if you're too quiet, it's a problem. But if you make noise, it's a problem. So I kind of raised my kids based on their personalities. So I'm a completely different parent than I am with my daughter because, I was a young mom and heavy under the influence of the Jamaican parenting, like do as I say, and I needed results very quickly because, you kind of sit, that's how it was supposed to be done. And then you kind of loosen it up a little bit. It's almost like you have to do the same discipline, like, no. I remind my daughter when I wanted to go to a party, I had to tell my mom a whole 2 months before the party, not like, the party was happening 2 months ago. So it's really asking permission, having discussions about, is this something you should do? So I kind of ask questions, and I know my mom didn't do that. It was just yes or no. There was no dialogue. There was no conversation. And we talk about that. Now we're sitting down and having conversations with kids. You realize that growing up, we never have conversations. It was just what they said was it, and that's it. So yeah. It's my son. It was he goes into these conversations and like, mommy, and I look at him sometimes and I said, boy, you don't know how lucky you are because at your age, I couldn't have this conversation.
Yeah.
But I also recognize that, they need to be able to express themselves because I recognize that even though I can express myself now as an adult, the way sometimes in which we were brought up that was culturally the old school way didn't always lend itself for us to know how to communicate effectively to people because we were always shut down.
Right.
So I'm shut up.
Yes, absolutely. I tell my daughter the same things, like, you lucky you even talking right now because when I was your age, I couldn't say nothing. Like there was no back talk or no looking a certain way.
You couldn't even think it.
Right.
And if you look like you're thinking it, they're going to tell you, say you're thinking it.
Exactly.
It's like, wait, how you know what I'm thinking? So, yes.
But as far as their culture, do you I know you cook and the culture is there in terms of that. You talk your patois and you cook your food, but what do you tell them about who they are in terms of being born here and also having this Jamaican heritage? Do you encourage them to, know their roots and kind of,
I,
be proud of that?
that's a hard question to answer because I think because my kids think that they're Jamaican, period.
Good.
So like 6-year-old son, I talked about Ding Dong, and for your audience, Ding Dong is a Jamaican dancer, dancehall artist, right? So my 6-year-old knows Ding Dong and he knows the song and he says, "Mommy, put on the TV so he can learn his dances." So in his head, he's Jamaican. Or when Usain was running, he just knew that, oh, Usain is running. "Mommy, please don't yell, okay? Don't yell." So he understood that, even the other day, my niece was playing Ludi, so they feel like they're Jamaican, and it's also because when we go to Jamaica and we visit, we go to different places. They know that they've been fortunate to be born here, but in their minds, they think they're Jamaican.
Honey,
So,
that's me too. That's my life. You're telling right now.
yeah.
I
So
think that's
that's the part.
amazing.
Yeah, so that's why I can't really answer because I'm like, so while my daughter listens to a lot of hip hop, she does know the Chronics and the Itana, and
Right.
and then my son, he knows Jenna Bunks. He's singing all of these songs, or Fleary or Fling. So
That's right. That's how it should be. For me, honestly, that's how it should be because in any other, culture, that is
yes,
how it is.
yes,
You cannot tell an Italian born, a child that's born here, but their family's Italian that he's not
that they're
Italian.
Italian. Yeah,
And his mom would probably fight you if you tried to tell her that her kids are not Italian.
that is very true. I know this.
So I just don't understand why our Caribbean
Caribbean. Hmm.
community, does that. And it really gets to my core. Like it bothers me. Like I will have arguments over this. I'll be ready to fight somebody over this. Like that's how passionate I am about this. So when I listen to your podcast, I'm so involved. I'm there like talking to myself, like, yes, yes, this is what I'm saying. Like I'm just hyped up over your podcast because it resonates with me so much. It's like
I
unreal.
mean, on a very basic level, I mean, you can get a Jamaican passport because you have
Exactly.
that's from Jamaica. So I mean,
Exactly.
yeah, that's
Girl.
yeah, those things. I feel like we shouldn't be wasting time having those conversations because the Irish, like you said, the Italian,
Mm-hmm.
you can never tell them that they're
No.
not who they are. So I think Caribbean people spending time on that conversation is just they're bigger and more pressing issues we should be focused on than whether or not someone is. Because the reality is, if you look at it, the same generation is helping to support the economy in
Mm-hmm.
different ways or propel the culture in different ways. So it's just like, it's a waste of time.
Right. So tell me, what do you enjoy the most about podcasting?
It's changing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I do enjoy like having these conversations because at the heart of it for me, a podcast is a conversation. And I tell most of my guests, like, this is a conversation. There's no prep work. The only question I ask you is the first two questions. And then, everything else just kind of goes it just goes where it goes. So it's having conversations, but I'm getting to a place where I now enjoy creating stories, right? Because I want to tell more stories like what I did for the 25th anniversary.
Yes, that was great, honey, when you had the plantain sizzling on the stove or the breadfruit, whatever you had
It
cooking.
was fish, yes, whatever
Fish
was
to fry
but
fish.
yeah, but it's like that's culture, right? It's sizzling. So
Yes, I
our story.
love that. That was so good.
Thank you. And I feel like I'm at a place where I love the interview based style, but I want to tell some stories that we can identify with, right? Like telling stories. And then when we meet, hopefully next week, we can get more into that. But really, I am enjoying this transition to this other aspect of creating a podcast and being more of the storyteller that I know I am and that people know I am. And every time someone asks me something and they're like, oh God, Kerry's going to tell a story. So I want that to come out in the show. I want to be a lot more creative in what I do beyond the interview based style.
Okay. So, what do you look for in guests to be on your show?
I'm a niche podcast, and part of being a niche podcast, and everyone says representation matters. So, what I look for in guests, first and foremost, you're either born in the Caribbean or you have a parent, grandparent who's from the Caribbean. And that's important because I want my kids to see other examples of people who are of the Caribbean and are doing things, because if you don't give them examples, it's very hard to know what to follow. Going back to that first instance of how does a Caribbean American woman navigate corporate America and people not say that she mean unapproachable, blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of the first thing. And then I kind of look at, do you have a story that's never really been told or told often enough? Those are the stories that I like, where you don't hear a lot from people. So I look for that. It's culture, heritage, first year heritage. And do you have a story that's interesting that has not really been told or told often enough? And that's kind of where I go to.
All right. So, what struggles do you face when balancing your full-time job, your family, and your podcasting passion?
Not enough time.
Right.
There's never enough time to do anything.
Yeah. Time is always.
Yeah, something falls through. But I'm getting to the point of being okay that, you know what? Someone said to me last week, boy, Kerry, I don't know. You do so much. Like, I don't know how you do it all. And I said, that's where you're wrong. I don't do it all. I do what needs to be done, and everything else just get weights and something fall through. I can only do but so much. So I address what I can, or I make room for what I can. And then the other things, can just wait. But it's time. It's time.
Okay. Do you feel like you are living a purpose-driven life?
I do. The question is whether I am. Here's the thing. I feel like I'm living a purpose-driven life, but it's almost like there are two currents, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have an idea in my head, the purpose that I'm moving towards, but life has a way of kind of reframing how you framed this purpose.
Mm.
So going back to when I said, I was going to be a lawyer and a teacher. I wasn't quite a lawyer, but I was close. I was kind of somewhere in there. And I wasn't quite a teacher, but, I feel like what I do is teaching. And part of what I aim to do, what I kind of stepped back, instead of giving myself titles, I know at the end of the day, I want to inspire people to just live, build, and achieve. So whatever, live life the way, in a full way, in a happy way, whatever that means for you. Build your career, your business, build relationships, and, achieve. And I mean, achieving is whatever you define it to be. So in that way, I am living my purpose. I just can't say, my purpose to be a lawyer or a learning and development professional. That's not it. Those are titles. It's the end goal that I feel like, yes, I'm moving towards in different ways, in different roles. So at church, my husband and I, we facilitate the marriage ministry, and that's kind of one way that, I'm living that purpose-driven life.
All right. Is there anything that you want to do currently, but it scares you to even think about trying it?
All right. So I'm not that girl who likes to be on video, but then everybody's like, oh my God, do another video. And I just don't know. It's really a stretch because I'm really that behind the scenes person. And so the video and this whole creative part that I'm exploring with the podcast and storytelling and producing, all of those, I like recording that episode with the 25th anniversary. It was like one of the scariest things I've done, and that was episode 93, right? So I had like more than 93 episodes because I had 2-part episodes, but 90 some odd episodes in, I was very nervous as if it was the first time I was doing a podcast episode, recording that episode because it was so different. But when I was done, I was like so happy. And I
Yes.
kept saying to people, like, I now have an understanding of what artists or actors feel when they've moved from being an actor or they've transitioned into the producer role or one of those other roles, and they're excited about this project, but at the same time a little nervous because they're not sure if people are going to receive the project, but they're excited because they felt creatively alive. And that's how I felt in that episode.
It was really good. So you did a really good job with that, honestly. And it's so funny. I'm telling you, like I feel like we have so much in common because that is something that I've struggled with as well. Like the whole video thing. Everybody's like, "Oh, do video. Are you doing a video podcast? Are you doing a video thing?" And I have other ventures that I'm doing that kind of requires me to do video, and it's just like, ugh, I
Yeah, yeah. I'm
don't.
like, Lord. Like,
Yeah.
I kind of feel like, you know what? And then we could talk more about this off air. But what I found was if I have to do the video alone, there are a couple of things with video. I have to be really excited about the topic
Mm-hmm.
or what I'm talking about. And two, it helps when I'm recording and there's someone else like supporting. So recording by yourself is very hard. So it's almost like when we're doing the podcast and if you do solo episodes without a guest, right? You're kind of really talking, to yourself. You're
Yeah.
talking to the guest, but you're really talking to yourself. So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of the same thing when you're doing the video and you're kind of setting up and you got to see yourself versus if my husband is here and he's doing the thing, we have more takes because I'm laughing or we're doing something else. But then it helps me to loosen up a little bit and not
Right.
be so self-conscious. And
Yeah.
also if the topic is something that I really, really want to talk about. But yeah, we maybe we need to like do joint video creation and when I've done those sessions, those have worked when I partner with my friend and we're like, okay, we're gonna record some videos for you, then you record some videos for me, and then we boom, knock it out.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Because I struggle. But,
Mm.
I've done a couple. So I feel like I got over my initial fear. But every time I have to do it, I'm like, oh, God.
Yeah, yeah.
I just
I know
don't
that
like,
feeling.
yeah, I don't like seeing myself on video and then just, I have to repeat stuff over and over. It's just like, oh my God, this is bad. But, you
It's
know,
that perfectionist thing where it's just like you want it to be perfect. This you don't like this, it don't sound right.
right.
All these different things.
Yeah.
And my chest too high because I feel like I need a full-on production team.
Girl, me too.
I'm like, no, 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 no. This is not.
Right. Bring it down a notch.
Yep.
So, what are three things that you are passionate about?
My relationship with God is very important. Family and living a full life. And that one is new because in the last 2 years, I've lost so many people in my family.
Mm-hmm.
And living a full life, we don't prioritize that. And full doesn't mean that you're flossing on Instagram and you're taking wonderful vacations or you're going everywhere. Full life just means that you are living and enjoying the moments, right? With family, with friends, and you're in the present because of literally, I had 3 grandparents who passed away within the last 2 years.
Wow.
So for me, it's like, and looking at their lives and looking how they lived on less than what I was making, just different things. And it's just like, it's very important to be in the present. On my personal Instagram page, I post when I want to, but it doesn't mean that I'm not taking a bajillion pictures when I'm out. I just recognize that if I was taking a picture in a moment and then I said, oh, I got to post this on Instagram, that took away from the experience of that moment.
Yeah.
And so I want to be present more for those moments. I was reflecting when my sister-in-law and her family first came up from Jamaica years ago. We spent a lot of time watching movies, and as our lives got busier, we didn't do that as much. We still do it when we can, but it's almost like we want to get back to a place where life was simple, and we can make it simple if all these things that we think are priorities, we really assess whether they are priorities. So yeah, just living a full life. And for me, that's always with family. And that's having God. And, that's the third passion that incorporates the first two passion, and having, friends. A lot of my friends are family, literally. And the friends that aren't part of my bloodline, I treat them as family because that's just kind of how much they mean to me.
I love that. So, my last question before you share your oh hell no moment is, when people meet you, what do you want them to know about you without you having to say it? What do you want them to take away from their experience with you?
I don't have high expectations, and I'll just say, you know what? She all right, she cool. She cool. Because I don't want to say, oh, I learned something, because there's a time and place, everything. So I may not meet you in a situation where we learn.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you want to learn the latest dance. I don't know. It's just like, minute. So I don't want to be say, oh, I've learned and inspired you. Like, yo, more people that say, yo, she cool. Because when someone thinks that you're cool and you're all right, that's kind of the first step for the other things that you think should happen, whether you should inspire them or,
Mm-hmm.
And I look at the friendships, the newer friendships that I've had, where it's just like, they were like, yo, Kerry cool and I said, all right, man. And because the first impression most people have of me is that I'm stuck up. Yeah. So when they do have this, like, oh, she's cool. She's all right. She's funny. So yeah, it's just, she all right. She cool.
That's
cool.
good. That works.
Yeah.
So this is the Oh Hell No podcast, and I know that you have had some Oh Hell No moments, because we've all had them. So share an oh hell no moment with us. It could be a professional moment, a personal moment. We just want to be a part of that moment for the moment.
All right. I think the most recent oh hell no moment was I started this job, and one of my coworkers at the time was just like, he was telling me how he went to Jamaica. And he went to Montego Bay, which is where I'm from, and how people weren't nice. They were jerks. I'm like, okay. I didn't just deny that people were nice, because I'm like, whatever. And then he was like, so he was kind of saying like, so you from Jamaica? I don't remember how it came up, but it went to weed, which kind of defaults when they hear Jamaica, right? So weed comes somewhere in that conversation. So I was like, oh, no, I don't smoke. He's like, what? You from Jamaica and you don't smoke weed? I was like, yeah, what kind of Jamaican are you? I was like, oh, hell no. First of all, you're not going to ask me that. But yeah, that was my like, oh, hell no. Like, what? Wait, what? Because I'm Jamaican, I have to smoke weed? Like, yes.
It's so ridiculous, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, oh, hell no. Like, what?
Yeah.
And then the sister standing next to him, which was kind of, the other part was like, never, ever. I looked at her like, what the?
It's unreal. I don't know. People are so crazy. But it was such a pleasure talking to you today and finding out a little bit more about you and your journey. Thank you for coming on the show. Please tell everyone where they can download your podcast and, check out your website and all the things you have going on.
All right, great. So Carry-On Friends, the Caribbean American podcast, you can find us at carryonfriends.com. That is my portal to the world. We're also in Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, and wherever place you listen to podcasts. But come to the website. You'll see a bunch of other stuff. I promise I'm going to put more articles on there. But on social media, at Carry-On Friends on Twitter and Instagram and on Facebook. And personally, you could connect with me on Twitter at Kerry-Ann Reid, which is a play on words. And yeah, that's where I am.
Awesome.